Vice President Harris expected to outline her economic vision for the country in a speech today in Pittsburgh. The Harris campaign is billing it as a major event. Joining us right now on Harris's economic ideas and why he's supporting her in her run for the White House. Blair Effron, co-founder of Centerview Partners, a corporate advisory and mergers acquisition firm that's advised on more than $4 trillion, that's with a T, dollars in transactions. Nice to see you, sir.
Thanks for having me.
We've been asking a lot of questions around this table about what her economic policy is. We've heard, obviously, about the $50,000 for small business owners. We've heard about the plans to create new housing and the $25,000 for new owners and things like that. And some tax things, but not really. What are we actually going to learn today?
So I think what you've learned today, Andrew, is the coda to what has been a lot of information that's put out there. She gave an economic speech in North Carolina, another one in New Hampshire, and today in Pittsburgh. What you know is this. She is fundamentally running a campaign that is about doing better for the middle class, 100 million people. That fits squarely within the Democratic Party perspective. That said, she goes at this in a very practical, solutions-based way. So she's come up with a set of policies that say, what is the best way to help the group I want to help? It's a growing economy. So to do that, you need all the private sector to do well. And she's laid out a pretty strong plan as to what that means. Start with small business. She's been doing that and running that, obviously, as a vice president. You have the $50,000 tax credit. You have the innovation perspective she's put forward. And then you get to the actual innovation machine, the opportunity economy. She's from California. She knows that world well. Most importantly for this group is she's met and become close to some of the most important, well-known business leaders in the country. Why does that matter? And she's developed these relationships. It matters because she knows when the private sector does well, including the biggest companies, when they make money, they invest back in their business.
But does that mean that there's a new wrinkle? Is there going to be a new wrinkle in this speech? So something that we're going to
You'll hear
learn.
new things. You will.
And how does that relate? You said she's met with lots of CEOs, which she has. The Wall Street Journal reported on some of the meetings actually just yesterday. Is your sense that she will speak out loud about, therefore, her regulatory regime, for example? You talked about big business, how she actually thinks about success. You know, the small businesses, you're only going to hopefully support those small businesses in hopes that one day they become big businesses. Correct. She doesn't talk about the second part.
So first of all, focus on what she says, not on what she doesn't say, okay? And what she says about big business, she's told you on tax. Corporate tax rate, 28%. We had that with Ronald Reagan. Buybacks, 1%. She's going to 4%. Last year, we had the most buybacks in the history of the country. It won't have an impact.
Won't have an impact.
It hasn't, and will continue not to have an impact. That breaks with Biden. The idea that she wants the middle class to create jobs, 25 million applications for new business.
Right.
Okay. She talks about cost, bringing it down, everything from healthcare to everyday goods to housing, right, and how you promote housing. So. She recognizes that you need to be aligned with the private sector generally to be successful, as opposed to being in conflict with any particular group.
Blair, look at what she says. That's where, if there had been more interviews done, or if she'd come here and we could ask her questions, we could find out exactly about some of these things she said in the past. And I love you, and I just have to press you a little bit on this. There are many things that she said in the past that maybe she's evolved. Maybe she no longer feels this way. We don't know because we haven't really been able to ask her. But whether it's, I mean, she did weigh in on abolishing the filibuster. That is troubling to a lot of people, including Joe Manchin. But, you know, just ending private health insurance or decriminalizing illegal crossings, all these different things that are now, I don't know, maybe she's evolved. But here's the way Bill Ackman put it. I saw a tweet yesterday. I don't know if you saw this, Andrew, but he said, and I thought it was, we were told by the administration that Biden was in perfect health and that videos of him exhibiting serious deterioration were right-wing propaganda. Goes on to say the Biden lie is perhaps the greatest lie ever told to the American people by our government, and was told repeatedly with a bold face by the current Democratic nominee for the president. How do we ever believe anything that she says from now on. And all of a sudden, and you've seen this, she's now the former most left-leaning senator in the Senate is now a gun-toting, shoot-the-intruder individual that, is going to build a wall. Why should we believe any of that stuff, Blair?
So, Joe, the good news is most of the country does believe her because
we haven't seen the vote yet. Well, you're talking about on polls or something?
On polls, but let me finish if you could. For all fair questions, I personally respect someone who evolves on anything as they learn more. She's been the vice president for 3.5 years. She's learned a lot, okay? And what she's learned about, and by her curiosity in terms of getting to know the private sector well, getting to know business well, understanding the gears, the mechanisms, how it works, it has helped her come to a perspective across a lot of things.
But even Bernie Sanders came out and said that none of these things, she doesn't believe any of these things. She wants to get elected and she's going to go. Why should we not think she's going to go back to what I think are some horrifying policy positions to a lot of Americans?
I've been doing this a long time. I actually believe when a politician or a public servant says something in a campaign, they believe it. So when Donald Trump says he wants to have $11 trillion of tax give-me's going on to our fiscal debt, I believe that. When Kamala Harris says that she wants to have a pay-for on everything we do so that we have fiscal discipline, responsibility.
But you don't believe the other things
she
said about abolishing private insurance. You don't believe that. You don't believe.
So what I am saying is she is very clear about what her perspective is to help the country economically.
It's changed.
It has evolved, as has Donald Trump's, as has any politician. I respect
Donald Trump used to be a Democrat, so I don't even know what we're talking about
here.
He
used to not want to do so. You don't know what about it.
No, all I'm saying is what he's saying, which I'm listening to, is he's saying there's certain policy positions she's talking about now and certain things she talked about 3 or 4 years ago. You have told me repeatedly I'm not supposed to think about what Donald Trump thought about 3, 10, and 20 years ago. So I'm saying, okay, I'll play along with you.
The choice for a lot of Americans is whether we're electing the most far-left individual.
Joe, that's just silly, because I would be very worried about electing
mandatory gun buybacks.
Any public servant who had the same positions today that he or she had 10 years ago.